A lot of climbers from my area say that bouldering in Oslo feels way harder than what we are used to. Back home, blue problems usually means 6A to 6A plus or V3. And in Oslo, the same color is graded around 5 to 5 plus or around V2. So is the grading really harder, or are we just not used to the style? To find out, I gave myself a challenge to climb every blue problem in the gym, no more than 5 tries on each. Same color, different rules. Let's see how it compares. The first 5 boulders all went down on the first try. A couple of them felt like the typical blue ones from my gym, but other had a few spicier moves, but nothing too sketchy. I felt in control the whole time, and the reading was straightforward. It was a solid start, and I felt pretty good. The next 2 boulders should have been flashes too, but I totally misread the beta. The orange one was actually pretty easy, once I realized the smaller orange holes were part of the problem as well. Without them, it felt pretty hard to get to the top, but with them, it was pretty easy. On this pink boulder, I made the classic mistake of trying to grab a foothold. Spoiler, it didn't work. But once I switched beta, it went much better. The yellow one took a few tries, but for some reason I only managed to film the last attempt. It was the section past the volumes that gave me trouble. And the final dynamic move took some effort, but I flashed that move. These next 3 boulders definitely took more work. They felt more complex than the earlier ones, with trickier sequences and harder decisions. On the first boulder, I struggled to figure out the middle section. I watched a shorter climber go to the left, and that didn't really work for me. But then I watched a tall guy just jump straight up, and I decided to give it a try, and surprisingly, it worked for me as well. The second boulder was not really my style. It was built up by volumes and awkward positioning, but I somehow made it to the top. But honestly, I wouldn't really do this boulder again. The last boulder in this group was probably the most physical of the whole session. It was a big overhanging boulder with a lot of powerful moves, and I seriously doubt that this can be a V2. But what a boulder! A series of hard committing moves and my definitely favorite boulder of the day. All 4 of the upcoming boulders had at least one crux move that really slowed me down. On the first pink boulder, the first challenge was getting past the volume, and even once that worked, the final section was still pretty tricky. This yellow problem had a powerful dyno in the overhang, and it took me a couple of attempts to stick that move, and the problem was to get the feet on the right position after sticking the landing with the hands. Still, I got it within 5 attempts and I was really happy. The purple one started out a bit confusing until I saw another climber using the purple hold to the left, and that made the start a lot easier for me as well. But the real crux was getting over my foot and reaching out to the hold on the purple volume. But when I finally was able to do this move, the rest was pretty smooth. The white boulder also gave me trouble right from the start because I misunderstood how the start was supposed to be established. So it made the first move a bit more awkward than it should be. Once I figured that out, I still had to find a way to move through the volume, a bit of a dynamic move. And when I finally was able to do that move, the rest was a walk in the park. And now it's time for the very last V2 boulder. This boulder had a kind of creative and funny start where you have to squeeze in to get support to do the start move. And then you have to do kind of at least that's what worked for me, a dynamic move to a pretty crimpy hold. And then you are supposed to go around the corner. And as I can see this boulder, you're supposed to kind of like paddle dyno or throw yourself around the corner. And I did a few like 50% tries, but I never really fully committed to the final move. Physically, I probably had enough power left to do this move, but the idea of throwing myself around that corner just felt too risky and sketchy, so I held back. It wasn't lack of power that stopped me, it was my head and the mental game. So sometimes bouldering is not just about strength, it's about the mental aspect as well. So back to the original questions. Are these blue boulders actually V2s, or am I just weak? At home, blue usually means V3. Here, blue is supposed to be V2, around frensh 5+, which many climbing gyms consider as a beginner level. but a lot of these problems really didn't feel beginner-friendly to me. Some of them definitely matched what I'm used to from Tønsberg, simple, straightforward, and fun. But many others required technique and strength you can't expect from a new climber. Drop knees, toe hooks, heel hooks, dynamic moves, even risky catches that could lead to injury if you miss. Some holds were small and crimpy, and many boulders needed solid route reading or experience to understand the beta. A few of the cruxes felt straight up intimidating, and not just physically. Of course, height and personal style matters. And honestly, I often overcomplicate things for myself, especially when I'm climbing alone. Some of these boulders could have been climbed much easier than I did it. But even taking that into account, these boulders really felt harder than V2s. So are they really V2s? Not in my opinion. I'd say most of them land somewhere around V3 to V4, but regardless of the number, I'll 100% be back to this gym because the setting here is some of the best I climbed. Creative, technical, powerful, and just plain fun. So run over to visit Klatreverket Løkka if you are visiting Oslo this summer. Thank you for watching, and I see you in the next video.